Hey everybody, welcome back to the show in which we talk about your psychology, what you're going through, your emotional issues. Boy, we have a lot of great things to talk about today that relate with your psychology. Not only the content of your psychology, not only what the issues are, but how to solve them. Which I think is kind of a false dichotomy. So, some people classify psychology in two broad branches. There's the content psychology, then there's motivational psychology. And technically, what I do is the content psychology. But I think if you look at the content, if you bring enough awareness to the content, there's the motivation. There's the inspiration, all you need for whatever actions you need to take. The content informs the action. I think when you look at these things in the correct way, I think if we get a more clear picture of psychology and what's really going on with us through a more maybe definite unified theory, perhaps, then a lot of these seemingly, false dichotomies tend to break down. Like the libertarian, small L, non-political libertarianism versus determinism. Just free will versus determinism. How could these both kind of be true? What's the mechanism through which these can both be true? We can kind of understand where the determinists are coming from, but also, without free will, there's no point to talking about this. We could just use logical fallacies to disabuse any argument if free will doesn't exist. Well, I think we have to look at the emotions and how they inform our actions. We don't get actions, we don't get thoughts without emotions. We don't get emotions without emotions. Did you know that? But yeah, so these are your issues, and how do we work through them? I don't think it's any easier than anybody else says, but I think we can at least make the process simple. So at least you understand what's going on. My favorite analogy, the broken boiler, which I'm guessing I got from that. I don't know where I get these things from. Maybe never worked on a boiler. Probably from that Futurama episode, Parasite's Lost. Remember, Fry gets the parasites and they improve his body and they work out his muscles and they make him smarter. So then Leo likes him. Actually, Fry does an extremely heroic thing there, right? He dislodges the parasites on his own. He goes in his body on his own. I think that's a reference to Inner Space, which I've never really seen, that movie from the 80s. Anyway. Yeah, so the boiler breaks and the metal pipe goes through his body, and that's how he realizes that he has the spores, because they fix his metal pipe for him. All right, guys. Talk about your psychology. Also, lame science fiction cartoon references from 20 years ago. Yeah, your psychology. Hopefully not just your psychology. This show might get a little bit stale if we just talk about your psychology. So we talk about cultural issues too. Well, to make sure this show doesn't get as stale as my personality dictates. One cultural issue going on right now is, racism, anti-racism. How do we solve racism? Or how do you make yourself not racist if you are racist? I don't know. I'm not going to judge whether you're racist. That's between you and whatever you consider your God to be. You and your priest, you and your therapist, perhaps. It's just the modern priest, same thing. How do you solve racism? And I think the way that people are going around solving racism right now is just indicative of a deeper problem in psychology. Like what's the main hegemony, right? The main intellectual thrust behind psychology right now is cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, it comes in a bunch of different forms. Evidence-based, whenever somebody says evidence-based cognitive therapy, RABT, back to Ellis. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ones. I can't think of any. Positive psychology. Okay, that's enough examples. Well, right. So what do? You just have a negative belief. Well, let's change that belief. Let's keep reminding ourselves that belief isn't true. Racism's a problem, allegedly. I don't know. We're not going to get political. Let's just say it's a problem, or at least that racism exists. Well, how do we solve racism, right? Well, anti-racism. You just go right to the symptom and you try to solve the symptom. And not only do you not solve the symptom, but you make the situation even worse. You have this negative belief of I'm not good enough, for example. Well, just change it to I am good enough. Well, you don't have enough reference points in your reality. You don't have enough experiential points because that belief didn't come out of nowhere, right? The belief that you're not good enough, it just doesn't appear. You act in a certain way, or first, in childhood, It's right to go back to free will versus determinism. In childhood, you are treated in a certain way or not treated, as the case may be. Neglect, the most common form of abuse. You're not treated in a certain way, and you begin to repeat these patterns. Right? We're not blaming your parents, but you can maybe tend to repeat these patterns later in life. And as you're repeating those patterns later in life, you just, of course, will accumulate the belief that you're not good enough. Because maybe you're not treating yourself like you're good enough, right? Maybe you're not looking at your needs. Maybe you don't understand your anger, because everybody tells you anger is wrong, desire is suffering. Maybe not. This is anti-Buddhism here. Maybe you need to put your needs first. So, how do you solve the belief of I'm not good enough? Well, it doesn't come from just changing the belief. How do you solve racism to the extent that it is a problem? And I do think that racism exists, by the way. It's just everybody thinks that it exists. We're just arguing over to what extent we think it's a problem, but it doesn't matter for this discussion. And you're not going to solve it with anti-racism. And as we see now, with anti-racism, it's just forming its own kind of racism, just like cognitive behavioral therapy. It just forms its own kind of negative belief. Like if you just need to tell yourself, if you have the negative belief that you're not good enough, what are you telling yourself implicitly when all you're doing is just changing it to a positive belief? That in itself is a negative belief, that all you need to do is change your negative beliefs to a positive belief. Right? That is implicitly cutting yourself off from the environment. That just creates this whole kind of negative thing. And then you have now the negative belief that you can't have negative beliefs. It just keeps perpetuating itself, just like anti-racism. It just, it's against racism. Okay, on the surface, we're all for it. But boy, it just doesn't seem to completely eradicate racism the way that at least it intends to. And I'm not saying everybody in these movements, the way that it intends. Maybe some of their intentions are good. I don't know. I tend to look at these things psychologically, of course, and I don't think the intentions with some people are good, but I don't even think that they know what they're doing. They're going for their own kind of power, their own kind of agency, because they never really got that. They never really had a sense of power, agency, like Black Lives Matter. Now, I understand the importance of Black Lives Matter versus White Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. Like, you don't have to, are we beyond that? I think we're all beyond that. I mean, if you're listening to this show, there's a chance there's a really good chance you're more intelligent than average. We're beyond that. We understand that. But, I think what's really going on psychologically with Black Lives Matter, just demanding that your life matters, is it's like, I need you to validate me. And I think that's true. I think people do need validation, but the ultimate root of that is a lack of ability to validate yourself on your own. And this goes back to the negative belief of I'm not good enough. Well, if you go throughout your life not validating yourself, you are going to accumulate the belief that you're not good enough. And so how do you validate yourself, right? Well, we have to look at your emotions. We have to look at especially your anger, how that works, how to get your needs met. If you do not get your needs met, then of course you're going to think that you're not good enough. And just changing the belief is ridiculous without looking at the mechanism behind the belief. Same thing with racism, right? What's the mechanism behind anti-racism? Well, nobody looks at that. But the only mechanism there, of course, is individualism, right? Developing an identity on your own. That's all it is. It's been demonized a lot of ways. People say, individualism, like you're cut off from the rest of the world, like other people don't affect you. No, nobody's saying that. Nobody ever said that's what individualism is. You need to make individualism look that way to push your agenda, which is, of course, tends to be, if you're demonizing individualism, the agenda is collectivism. You have to look at the mechanism behind it. You have to look at the mechanism behind the beliefs. I don't care how much you hate that negative belief. If you don't get the mechanism behind it, it's not going to matter. Oh, yeah, engineering. Great, you want to be an engineer, you want to build a bridge, well, you got to learn math. Well, this is engineering without math. This is anti-bridge collapse engineering, but there's no math, there's no algebra. Well, the bridge is going to collapse. And then who's going to build that bridge? Just a bunch of pressure groups with no real evidence, just fighting each other for their own, raw materials to build the bridge, and it's not going to go anywhere. I don't care how much you're against engineering, bear with me with this analogy. I don't care how much you're against anti-engineering. It's not going to make bridges stay up unless you understand math, unless you understand algebra, unless you understand individualism. That racism is going to keep happening. I mean, that's going to be the default. But we're not having that discussion, which makes you kind of think: do the anti-racists really want to end racism? I don't know. I'm not going to psychoanalyze everybody in a whole movement, but it may just be nothing more than not understanding the issue for what it is. And and this is why people get conspiracy theories, because look at the anti-racism. Do you really think it's anti-racism? Do you really think it's about ending racism? You don't think there's any like cabal or nefarious factors involved here? I don't know. Maybe there are. And believe you me, I enjoy spouting my own conspiracy theories. It's a lot of fun. Let me move this desk. It's a lot of fun to spout conspiracy theories, but it might just be people don't understand what they're talking about. Right? Just like the conspiracy of CBT. Like, I can make the same case for that. Oh, you go to a cognitive behavioral therapist and they tell you to have a positive belief about yourself. Well, what ultimately happens implicitly is you just accumulate a more negative belief, because all you're doing with the negative belief that you had previously was to change it. And what are you saying about yourself? Oh, it's a conspiracy to keep you dumb and dysregulated. Or maybe it's just not very intelligent. But yeah, this is about you. If you have, I don't know, maybe you have racist thoughts, maybe you have racist beliefs, who knows? I'm not going to define that. However you define racism. Do you solve it by telling yourself not to be racist? Do you solve yourself by going to a re-education, diversity seminar? Or do you work on yourself, your own issues, your own individualism, your own identity? And then the racism, whatever racism issue, solve yourself. That's how to solve racism. That's how you do it. Nothing to do with racism and everything to do with you and your psychology. If we can't talk about anger in a proper context or anxiety in a proper context and what emotions are, then the racism issue, good luck solving that. Just like good luck having a positive belief about yourself without engaging in reality in a fortuitous way. All right, I got a question about narcissistic mothers. Thank you for your questions on. So I definitely get the questions in email, and thank you for all your questions in YouTube comments. I do read those. I know I don't respond to all of them. If you get a phantom thumbs up, that's probably me saying, yeah, I'm going to answer this question at some point. So I got a question about narcissistic mothers and where this comes from. And I also saw this movie, The Squid and the Whale, which came out in 2005. And I don't know, I just love every movie with Jeff Daniels, the guy who plays Dumb and Dumber. I just love every movie with that guy, because he's like going on to do more serious roles, and like real serious roles, not Jim Carrey serious roles. And it's always, you just see like this hint of Harry Dunn in there. So 2005 movie with Jeff Daniels. And this is a movie about narcissistic mothers, narcissistic parents, and in a way, the movie shows you exactly what to do. It's kind of a strange movie, but I do think it's put together well, and it's really minimalist, so I like that. Not too much to pay attention to. But it's about this couple in Brooklyn in 1984, or maybe 1986, and then they're getting divorced, and there's all these other ancillary issues. Like, they're both academics, they both have their PhD, they're both writers. But the main thrust of it is that they are both narcissists in the sense that they are using their children for emotional support. And I guess we'll get to it, but so they get divorced because initially the wife is cheating. And there's two boys. One's 16, another's 12. And they get a divorce because the mom was cheating. The dad moves to the other side of Prospect Park, and you really think that the mom is the bad person, because she doesn't have a healthy attachment with the male at that point. Her and her husband are disconnected. So what does she do? Right, and this is really the cause of the narcissistic mother. It's portrayed pretty well in South Park between Eric Cartman and his mom. Although Cartman doesn't really act in the typical way that men do act when they're around a narcissistic mother. They can't act that way. It's a cartoonish portrayal of how young boys act in response to a narcissistic mother. Yeah, imagine that. So you don't have a good attachment, your mom, you don't have a good attachment with another adult man or woman, however the case may be, or at least friends in general. So you start to use your children for that. You start to use your children to talk through emotions, to talk through things that are totally inappropriate. And yeah, Squid and the Whale, it's a good movie, but there's just some parts in there that make you cringe because of the lack of boundary, right? Because you see the mother using the boys for emotional support. Oh yeah, so the question I got is, how it affects dating, and this is exactly how it affects dating, because what children do in these these situations, it's like a totally unfair power dynamic. All this commentary we're bringing to power dynamics in corporate hierarchies, and how women can feel taken advantage of simply because they're this powerful person's assistant, right? Like, it's not really fair to hit on a woman in that context because you have so much more power than she has. And, I'm not saying it should be illegal or whatever, but you can understand how that could put undue pressure on a woman. Although, it's there's a gray area there. Somebody should write a song called Blurred Lines and dance around with a super low cut suit. Because that's all what seduction is, right? It's just like putting a woman in the situation where she's way more likely to say yes, right? And there's there's always this sense you could imagine where you are kind of taking advantage of a woman, but also, in certain situations, taking advantage is more appropriate. I don't know. That's a completely separate issue. We're not going to get into that. So the power dynamic between a mother or a man, as the case may be, we'll get to it, or the father. The power dynamic between her and her son is just too imbalanced, right? Like the son just feels like, oh, mommy has this power, especially before puberty. And if the mother tries to use the son as an adult relationship, then the son's going to unconsciously learn, oh, I need to make mommy happy, right? I'm not happy unless mommy's happy, so I need to do whatever I need to do to make mom happy. So it's not going to be like a mature conversation between two people. I don't care how precocious the kid is. It is the kid managing mommy's emotions. So this is, of course, terrible in the dating world, because then the kid, the son goes out on a date, and it's not about connecting with the woman. It's about making her happy. I need to do whatever I can to make this woman, who I'm sitting across from at a bar, I need to make her happy the same way I made mommy happy. And it goes back to, the how to not be a racist and how to manage your own needs. That's what it comes down to. But you just implicitly learn that your own needs don't matter. You just go around managing everybody else, and you're so tuned out about what you want, what you need. Like, I've asked clients, multiple times, what do you need? And it's like, I've never even considered that. Or that's not even an appropriate thing for me to consider. It's not about what I need. It's what I need to, what other people want from me, or implicitly what I need to live up to. My needs. Well, what's that? That's the narcissistic mother. Can you guys hear that? I think there's a chainsaw outside. Well, it's the Animus here this week with chainsaw. All right, we're back. I think it's a little bit quieter now. So it's about being tuned out from yourself because you're so tuned into your mom. And this is the dark mother, as Jung talks about in Symbols of Transformation, Volume 5. This is the dark Ouroboros. Instead of eating yourself as like a nutritional thing, you just eat yourself and keep eating yourself and never learn from it. I think this is part of the epidemic of millennials, especially millennial men, the stereotypical not leaving their mom's basement. It's just because you're just trapped in this relationship, and it's great because then you don't have to grow and challenge yourself and move out and ask yourself what your own needs are and try to get those met, because then when you don't do that, then you can't really fail. And we have great distractions now, that keep us indoors. When we blame the distraction, it's not really a distraction. There's an emotional issue there. And yeah, the conversation about distraction is meta because it's a distraction from the real issue, right? The emotional issue involved. But the great thing about Squid and the Whale is they show exactly how to manage this. What is Jesse Eisenberg? He's the older one. He's the 16-year-old. His character. What does his character do? His father's in the hospital and he needs him. And there's that really disgusting scene towards the end. Yeah, the father needs his son around. I need you there to help me. He needs him there. He just gets this really dark narcissistic place. and Jesse Eisenberg leaves. He separates, which I'm not a big fan of physically separating from your parents as a way to separate from them psychologically. I don't think that really works. I mean, I do think that's important. You know, we have college and you move out and get a job. That's important. But if I would be a fan, if I would recommend physically separating from your parents from a time, it's when you have been affected by the narcissistic mother or father. You feel like you need to manage their emotions, and it's not a permanent separation, just at least 3 months off of no contact with your parents. You know, especially if you've been living at home too long. And then once you work through those issues, and those 3 months will be painful, very similar to rehab. I mean, what you're doing is you're removing the oxytocin injection that you get from your mom, which, you know, was great and great for your brain development when you're 1, 2, 3, and 4. But when you're 24, it's a huge inhibitor to your growth, of course. I mean, it's like that sick incest thing. I mean, yeah, that's why some of these scenes in Squid and the Whale are so disgusting, because it's emotional incest. And as we talk about in the incest video, emotional incest isn't too far off on the disgusting spectrum as physical incest. You know, one follows the other. So yeah, you got to separate, and that's what Jesse Eisenberg's character does. He actually leaves his father. He says, yeah, I'm going to come back. He doesn't even come back. Yeah, I'm okay with lying to your parents in that kind of situation when you just have to get the F out. And then he goes and, well, there's this motif introduced early in the movie, the Squid and the Whale, which is this exhibition just an exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And he goes and he contemplates the exhibit. But really what he's doing is, right, that this giant squid and the whale, the sperm whale and the squid are wrestling underwater. Of course, it's symbolic of unconscious issues. He needs to separate from his father so he can be exposed to his own unconscious issues, manage those. And that's how you overcome the narcissistic mother or father. You know, there's artistic, poetic license in the movie. You know, what's really the squid and the whale? What does that represent? Well, I think I've diagrammed that out for you. Maybe not perfectly, or maybe not completely, but what I have is correct. So how you manage your emotions, how you manage your anger, how you manage your anxiety. You look at what you need, you look at what you're avoiding, you look at what you need, you get those needs met in a pro-social way, look at what you're avoiding, and you confront those methodically, step by step, if you have to. And if you can't get to that place, then it's about therapy in group so you can become ever more aware of these issues, come to the surface, squid and the whale, proverbial squid and the whale, like come to the surface, and then with enough awareness, with enough light shining on them, you can do something about it, right? Content versus motivation. With the right awareness to the content, all the motivation, you know, what you need to do to act is right there. Not only is it there, but you're going to find yourself just acting in different ways the more awareness you bring. But we got to bring the awareness. The artistic license is great. The symbolism, the motif of the squid and the whale is great, but you know, that's not going to help you separate from your mother. You know, you got to be more specific about these things. And that's what we do here. And yeah, it's not only the issue, but how to talk through it so you can go on and solve it. You know, another great part about this movie that really doesn't have to do with narcissistic mother, but so the mom was the bad guy, right? She was the guy cheating on her husband. And that's why they got the divorce. So you can understand, you know, where the husband was coming from, Jeff Daniels. And but slowly throughout the movie, she became the good guy, and the husband, Jeff Daniels' character, became the bad guy. Because she was creating relationships with men. She was dating. You know, she was having sex, in a sense, whereas Jeff Daniels' character wasn't. I mean, there was like that weird relationship with one of his students who was living with them, and we don't know exactly what happened there, but I think that was the point of the movie, is it's just kind of vague. And then there's that one scene where, you know, some, you know, less than seemly things were done to her. So who became the bad guy? Jeff Daniels' character. I mean, but what's so great about the movie, and I think why I think it explicates this situation really well, this emotional situation, is because, I mean, was he even bad? You know, I don't know. But he didn't have real attachments. He didn't have any relationships. He couldn't, right? That's how we regulate emotions. And without that, you are going to act in a way that's narcissistic. You are going to lean on your children for emotional support, and they will grow up feeling like they need to make you happy. And it's going to be terrible for their relationships in the future unless they meet me and figure out how their emotions work. But it's like you don't choose to be, if you find yourself a narcissistic mom or dad, you don't choose to not be a narcissist. Just like you can't choose not have a negative belief or not be a racist if you are one. What's the mechanism behind that? And without that mechanism, without going there, then you will be a bad guy. You will find yourself being a bad guy and you'll think, how did I get here? Well, it's not because you're a bad person necessarily. I don't know, maybe you are. That's a question for a philosophy show, not a psychology show. But it's just important to realize that you don't manage your issues. It doesn't matter. You're going to be the bad guy. Even if your wife, unfair universe, everybody's against me, your wife cheated on you at first and she was initially the bad guy. She will be the good guy. If she's less narcissistic, if she becomes less narcissistic by managing her emotions well, properly through an adult relationship, then the sons, they especially, the 12-year-old in that movie, he really needed a father at that time, but it doesn't matter. He's going to gravitate towards the mom. As much as he needs a father during that adolescent period, as much as he craves that, if the father is tuned out, if he's just tagging along with whatever his son's doing, doesn't matter. It's not just about being a father, though. It's just about your emotions, about managing your emotions. Even if, whether you have kids. All right, and we'll get to, that was technically a question, but we'll get to more of your questions here. I've been kind of not getting to these last couple of weeks. The first one, a great question. Thank you for asking it. We have decided what to do here, but it's always good to discuss things that have been decided. You know who says that. And it's the issue of, you want to break up with your girlfriend, but you don't know whether it's the right decision or what to do. And this is why, looking at your needs, even when I say that, and even when maybe it doesn't make any sense, what does that even mean? I don't really have any real needs right now. Well, there will be a time when your needs are really important, and how well you've been looking at your needs, looking at yourself, looking in on yourself, developing your own identity, your own sense of individualism. Not only will it come up in you not being a racist or you not being a narcissistic parent, but when it comes to the decision of whether to stay with the girl, been dating a girl for a year, maybe 2 years, and it's either terrible breakup or together forever. And I don't know what to do. Well, you gotta, the tuning fork, right? You gotta tune yourself first, and you tune yourself by looking at your needs. These little cracks forming in your foundation, which wasn't a big problem. You're just holding up this building, but then you had this huge snowfall. I don't know. You live in Tahoe. You got 2 feet in the span of a couple days, and now the foundation is really starting to crack. This psychological load of, do I decide to stay with my girlfriend? So that's the issue. That's not really an answer to your question. That's just saying, look, you got to manage the anger now. To prepare you're preparing yourself for the stress that you're going to feel. How many analogies do you need? The linebacker doing bench press. Do you need the pecs right now? Do you need the shoulders right now? No. But you're going to need it on Sunday. And that's the idea here, is to start getting good at looking at your needs. But, specifically in these situations, what you do is you connect more. What a lot of people do when they want to break up is they begin, they just get some thoughts and some doubts, which I think is totally normal in a relationship. I know people will say, I sometimes I think, have these people, are they real? Have they ever been in a relationship ever? Like you'll hear gurus say something like, if you have any doubt about a girl, then there's 100% doubt. Really? I could be dating 50 perfect 10 models. We're all sitting around reading Aristotle, and I would still be like, ew, is this the right situation for me? I don't know. Who are you, right? There's going to be doubt there. It's fine. But what a lot of people do when there's doubt is they begin to disconnect. They begin to retreat. They stop communicating as much. They kind of sit back and look and judge and not bring up concerns, not bring up any issues they're going through. And then when you do that, then of course the relationship's going to get worse. And then they say, see, it wasn't the right relationship. And then they break up. Or they begin to retreat emotionally like that, but then they're afraid, I can't get another girl like me anyways. So then they get married, and then it becomes a bad relationship, not because she was a bad girl for you necessarily, but because you retreated when you needed to connect. If there's ever a problem in a relationship, and this goes back to getting your needs, you need to start communicating. Resentments are a big thing. And resentments are normal. But resentments that you do not communicate very well, you need to talk through them. And I don't know if you go to, it depends on your relationship. I don't know if you go to a girlfriend and say, hey, I'm thinking about breaking up, but I don't really want to. No, I think there is an appropriate time to do that. It really depends on the situation. But just say, look, I have these concerns about our compatibility or about our shared values or about our chemistry. And, I come from the place of I like you, I respect you, and I don't want this to turn terrible. And maybe I want to keep this relationship, but these are some things I'm thinking about. And then the more you can do that and also take responsibility for your own issues, I mean, that's how you essentially get past any argument, right? It's you argue, you look at the other person's issues, but the argument's more about, okay, the other person's issues, I'm focusing on them, slowly bringing the attention back to you, what are my issues, how am I contributing to this? And then both people ideally work on their emotional issues separately. Oh, here's how I contributed to the argument, disagreement. Oh, here's how I did it. And that's how you get beyond it, so to speak, is by getting beyond your own issues. And then and then I'm talking to her, if she just keeps freaking out and she's not ready to communicate, then that's a good sign that, right? Okay, maybe this will lead to a breakup. But if, she's like, oh, really? Yeah, I was having some doubts too. And then you talk through it. And then you find that by talking through it, you actually become closer. Then there's your answer. It's not really, do I break up with her? It's, what's the next right step for you to do in this situation? It's always connect, where 99% of the time, what guys and girls do, it's not just guys, but I think, guys just tend to be more like that in the face of a relationship, is just disconnect, which is just, the worst thing. A very, very similar situation happens when people hate their jobs. What time are we at here? All right, yeah. We're good. So a very similar situation comes up when people don't like their jobs. Like, oh, I just find myself in this place where I don't like my job. Yeah, well, you never really looked at what you wanted to do, and you just did something that your mom wanted you to do, or dad, to go back to the squid and the whale point. Or you just did something for the money. I'm not saying the money is bad, but if that's the only reason why you decided to do something, then you're going to get to this place where, oh, yeah, I hate my job. Yeah, well, that's just the end result. Right? You're living in Tahoe, the 2 feet of snow in an hour or in a day. That is the pressure that's going to come. Is the foundation ready? We don't look at our needs. We're just going to get to this breaking point, and we feel it in these existential crises, but it's been building up for a while. So just more connection, and also, the point of, whether breaking up with your girlfriend is the right thing, or what decision do I make, or how do I make a good decision, right? Well, we always want to make a good decision, and of course, my point here, don't make good decisions. Get out of the mindset that you need to make good decisions. Get good at making decisions. Big difference. So maybe breaking up with your girlfriend is the right thing to do, but you stick with her. Well, if that's the decision that you make, you stick with her and you make the most out of that relationship. So I think you could probably do a lot with a relationship that's, no. I'd take that back. Sometimes. Not every time. If you're going to err to breaking up, you can always find another girl. I would just end there. But if you break up and realize it was the wrong decision, not because, it's a month later and you only had one day in the past 2 weeks and feel really lonely. And then you think, oh, I need my ex-girlfriend back, like the easy thing, the low-hanging fruit. Then that's a completely different story. All right, this next question. What happens when you share emotions with a girl, but you get hurt, or, she is negatively repelled by that? Like, I know we talk about emotions, and you got to be emotionally engaged in a relationship, otherwise it's just not going to be good. But there's also this issue of, well, if I share emotions with a woman, then I'm going to be weak. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. And a lot of guys are doing the stoicism, manosphere thing, red pill, or just, tune out, you be a real hard ass. If a girl's getting emotional or hysterical, just shut her down, not listen, because they're too afraid of doing the other thing of just getting overblown by their girlfriend's emotions, and then it takes control of her life. So the reactive response to that, right? The reactive response is to just shut down her emotions. Well, there's two things going on. I mean, the first thing is, maybe your girlfriend was just emotionally immature, and any sort of vulnerability you showed, even if you did it in the right way, we're going to get to it. Any sort of vulnerability you showed, she just wasn't ready for. She's tuned out. Maybe she had a narcissistic mother, and she's just not emotionally ready for a relationship. That's fine. That's a very powerful data point against her, and it's time to get out of that relationship. However, maybe you're just really bad at sharing emotions, and guys have that fear, of course, of being effeminate when sharing emotions, and it's a real fear, and it can really happen. But when you understand emotions and how they work, I mean, that's in part what we do here at Animus. When you understand these things and really how they work, right? Really how your emotions work, then again, content versus motivation. Looking at what the emotion is, it informs exactly how to talk about it. You talk about the emotion, you talk about what you're going through, and you take responsibility for it. I think that's what a lot of guys don't do, or that's a huge mistake that guys make when they're talking through their relationships. I think I have an article on the blog, animusempire.com/blog. It's from a couple years ago. How to talk through an emotional issue. How to create a mature connection. When you talk through the emotion, yes, but what a lot of people do when they talk through their emotions is it just is very uncomfortable, and it just erupts in this, just this avalanche of, ooh, geez, what's going on? But that's because, well, number one, they're not really comfortable with the emotion because they haven't processed it well in therapy, or they have been in therapy, but you go to a cognitive freaking behavioral therapist and they're not teaching you how to process your emotions. They're just showing you, oh, well, here's this negative thought that you have, this negative belief that you had, just change the negative belief, right? To go back to my point I made at the beginning of this episode. So you're just uncomfortable with the emotion. When you're uncomfortable with the emotion and you talk about it, it just comes off as essentially what it feels like to the woman as complaining or whining. And the implication of that is you're saying to the woman, you're responsible for my emotions. I need you to help me manage my emotions, which is a huge difference. Maybe it's subtle, yeah. I'll say it's a subtle difference, but it ends up being huge emotionally between that and here's something I'm going through and it's my issue. And I'm only using you in quotations, because I'm a freaking human being and I'm not conscious without another consciousness present. Right? And it's actually helping you by hearing me talk through my issues. Now you relate with me. Right? So it's this win-win. But even if there's, it's tricky, because even if, and some women are sensitive to this, and I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming women for being sensitive to that. They have the right to be sensitive. A huge part of their survival is on the trustworthiness, the stability of the man in their life. And if it's even 1% unstable, if there's even 1% complaining when you're talking through your emotions with your girlfriend, she might run. And that's not her fault. That may not be because of trauma. That just may be because, she really needs that stability. Now she's going to be more likely to go to the guy who just shuts down the emotion. That's going to be a better short-term solution for her than the guy who's too emotional, even if he's just 1 or 2% emotional. Emotionalism. Emotional good, emotionalism bad. Right? Emotionalism is, what I was just saying, complaining. The implication of emotionalism is you are responsible for this emotion. Help me deal with it the way that mommy did, when I was 3, 4, 5. Hopefully not too long after 5, by the way. So that's how you, So you got to process the emotion first, is what I'm saying. And then this is a huge part of therapy that not a lot of therapists or psychologists know, even know how to take people through. Shameless plug for me there. That's what we do. animusempire.com/schedule. And, we have one more question here. We have one more question and then one more comment. We have time. Is it okay to do the right things for the wrong reasons? I think this is an issue that comes up a lot. Thank you for asking it. It was actually coming up with a couple of my clients a few weeks ago. So in this situation, he wants to read, but he's read my book. He's doing some more introspection. That's awesome. He's realizing that the only reason he reads a lot is so he can be smarter than others. He's college age. I'm sure I didn't do any of that when I was 20. I swear. But it's still okay to read if all you really want to do is read so you can be smarter than other people. Well, yeah, you know, yeah, it's totally fine as long as you recognize the motivation as being, less than ideal. That's all. Um, yeah, just it's how we get involved in lots of things. I mean, I'm sure there's a huge part of that for me. Why do you think I was reading Nietzsche when I was 16 years old? Right, I was just creating a rich inner life, because maybe for most 16-year-old guys, myself definitely included, life wasn't ideal. Maybe not terrible, but compared to now, it's like, ooh, geez. It gets tough when you're a 16-year-old man trying to initiate yourself in a world that doesn't really initiate you for you. I mean, there are some initiations. Marriage is kind of one. I think that's why you still have war. I mean, yeah, if you really want to end war, there's lots of ways things you can do to end war. Right? It's not just by going to an anti-war protest. For some reason, that doesn't matter. You have to create societies with definitive initiation rituals for men, because if they don't get it in a healthy way, they're going to do it in an unhealthy way by killing people from another country. That's just a side political point. Don't pay any attention to that. So yeah, it's totally fine. Sorry, I'm just looking at this question, but. Yeah, it's like the other example I was thinking of is working out to get girls. I started working out in high school, and definitely a part of it was, at one time, it's strange because I knew that I wasn't going to get a girlfriend because I was strong. Like, I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I also just kind of had that in the back of my mind. Well, it's not going to hurt. If I have a 250-pound bench press versus a 200-pound bench, it's not going to hurt. So... But now what do? I still work out, but it's not to get girls. I mean, my wife doesn't care. It's fun. It's a great healthy thing. And that's what the hero's journey is. If you look at how it's structured and how transformation is structured, the hero goes from the first act to the second act because he's chasing something that ultimately isn't going to matter in the third and fourth act. Right, it's going to be at the second, third act break that he realizes, oh, I chased this second girl, I chased this girl into the second act. That's not really what I wanted. What I needed is the inner lesson that came from, can you hear that? Anyway, what I really need is the inner lesson that came from my experience chasing this girl into the second act. Okay, so this is about me and my issues. This is about my issues with my family, atonement with the father, apotheosis, right? So it's a huge step if you're a 20-year-old guy and you're just having the realization, I only read so I can be smarter than other people. That's good for now. Eventually, you're going to read because you like reading, and you're going to pick a career because you read a book and you were taken in one direction and thought, oh yeah, this is a great way for me to go. Now I'm reading because I'm learning more about this. I'm a better service to other people because I keep reading more, and I gain like a true sense of belief in myself as a result of that. And, the ultimate boon, if you want to go back to the hero's journey, the ultimate boon from that is now I don't have to go to a freaking cognitive behavioral therapist and hear me about changing my beliefs. Yeah, tell me about changing my beliefs, and I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for listening or watching. Like and subscribe, tell a friend. Again, we do free consultations, free 30-minute consultations, animusempire.com/schedule, and I wish you all the pain and joy that comes from being in touch with reality.